Oh dear. Red Bull's junior program's about to strike again, I fear. Could either Isack Hadjar or Liam Lawson find themselves out of a seat as early as this year? Well, considering what's going on down under right now, if it keeps going the way it's going, then, yeah, maybe. So come on everyone, get your British bias pitchforks at the ready! With Lawson's promotion to Red Bull Racing locked in, with him too having a clutch of first day photos released, it's almost like all the other teams are jumping on some kind of bandwagon. The junior ranks of Red Bull's junior team are buzzing once more because the door is now wide open for prospects like Arvid Lindblad to dream of reaching F1 faster than expected. It turns out we're probably going to be going back to fast-tracking youngsters who have some modicum of hopes of being just as good as Max Verstappen, and then they burn out really, really quickly. Red Bull will never learn, seemingly, because of what's going on in the background, aside from Liam Lawson getting the plum and Isack Hadjar partnering up against Yuki Tsunoda. Because promoting Yuki to Red Bull Racing would have been a logical move, and certainly calmed things down even more, but Red Bull's commercial priorities with Ford likely played a role in favouring Lawson, since both drivers, Lawson and Verstappen, can easily promote Ford-powered cars without issue or any awkwardness. But he does still remain vital to Racing Bull's midfield battle, so he's now stuck in limbo, at the mercy of Papa Stroll. So whilst Yuki Tsunoda is basically stuck where he is right now, and is about to become Team Faenza's most experienced driver in their 40-year history, yeah, ever since the days of Minardi, there is something going on right now during the Formula 1 and Formula 2 off-season which is really, really interesting. It seems like Red Bull Racing are in a rush for some reason. Now, I wonder why they're doing this. Could it be maybe the ultimate insurance policy for not just Max Verstappen, but maybe every other driver that isn't Yuki because his die is already cast? Arvid Lindblad, who will replace Isack Hadjar in Campos' F2 team for 2025, is leading the Oceania Formula Regional Series by 40 points with 2 rounds to go, 6 races. And if all goes well and he wins the championship, the super license points haul that he will get is bigger than you might think. He only needs to be 3rd place at least to get the 40 he needs, because let's not forget, in karting, your super license points there carry on for 5 years instead of the 3 seasons as are for any other series that is single-seaters. And all of this is before Formula 2 starts in a couple of months' time, so he's already done the job. So what we've got here is Christian Horner essentially going, well, if we couldn't put Kimi in the car, we'll decide to give it a go and put Arvid in the car instead. But even if his current campaign collapses in Formula Regional, he's still destined for F1 anyway, because I doubt that he combined with Campos will be a terrible combination and yield no super license points whatsoever. Sure, he wasn't the fastest rookie in the postseason F2 test, he came 13th and the middle of the rookie pack, but neither was he dead last. Could Red Bull pull him out of Formula 2 in the middle of the season and replace one of their F1 drivers, even earlier than what Toto did in pulling out Kimi Antonelli from the final race of the F2 season last year? Because, well, there wasn't really many point keeping him there, and he was feeling a bit poorly, and also, they would want to make sure that the narrative around Antonelli going into the winter was fairly positive, with being quite solid in the Abu Dhabi Young Driver test. Because don't be surprised that Antonelli's law, which was established that means 17-year-olds can take part in Formula 1 under special dispensation, and if he can do the business in Formula Regional and maybe do quite well in Formula 2 and Red Bull plead their case, the FIA will pretty much just go, yeah, alright, sure, he's won a championship, boom. And that immediately would make him a reserve driver for either Racing Bulls or Red Bull Racing, since Daniel Ricciardo is gone. He's no 3rd driver anymore. He probably maybe will turn up in some kind of Red Bull promotional event as a stunt driver. He might rock up to special events if he wants to. But the point is, though, is that once the formalities are out of the way, Arvid will double up Campos' duties with that of being in the F1 garage for the whole season, taking in the atmosphere. And as such, much like at Alpine with Colapinto, he will now become the TV director's camera fodder in case Hadjar or Lawson screw up. Tsunoda? Maybe. But for the most part, Tsunoda is, well, he's sort of out there in no man's land. He's just doing his thing now for the rest of the season. He's effectively an untouchable, but not in a good way, because he's not going to lose his seat this year because, well, Racing Bulls need him too much. But as I've mentioned in my previous videos, the ideal way of really settling the Red Bull Junior team's line of succession was to have Lindblad come in 2026 once Tsunoda was properly gone, the Honda ties being utterly broken, they came to an end, Hadjar, Lindblad together, Lawson in for a second season alongside Verstappen, and then whatever happens going forward, they've got a replacement with Lawson becoming team leader, and then there could be another season for Lindblad and Hadjar if they want to compete, or if Lindblad completely trounces Isack, but there would be ready candidates in Formula 2 and Formula 3 ready to take over the job, and the cycle repeats. There we go. Unfortunately, though, my cynicism got the better of me, and a post from the casual F1 fan just made me think, oh God, I know what's going on here. Because now I'm starting to think that maybe Red Bull is rushing things in to get Arvid Lindblad in to be the next Max Verstappen, but this time Red Bull have total control of their young Antonelli Verstappen next generation superstar, unlike with Max back in the day, because the Verstappen camp had a lot of authority. This time though, Horner would call the shots, because Arvid, he's his boy. They're preparing for a shake-up in the future, and I probably think you can guess why. It's quite evident that the senior team is not nearly as imperial as they were in 2023, with Verstappen battling with an RB20 that was not the fastest car for most of the year by his own admission, and the technical team not heeding his warnings or Checo's warnings earlier than they would have liked. Surely there is a sense amongst the hierarchy that Max could act out his and his father's words and maybe move on to another team or out of Formula 1 if they cannot provide Red Bull him a car that can compete for championships sustainably. Without Max having to grab the car by the scruff of its neck every single race and for every single lap. Okay, I hear you saying, well, that's fine. That's why Liam Lawson is in the seat next to him. He can take over as the future of Red Bull, right? Well, that's all very well and good. But considering the influx of brand new rookies who aren't even 20 yet, it's quite clear that the flavour of the month now, thanks to Kimi Antonelli being there and Oliver Behrman, is that the younger you can get them in, the longer they will be around for the future. So with Lawson being 22, that's positively ancient when you're considering junior drivers. But ultimately, he is meant to be the guy after Max Verstappen. Well, I'm really concerned here, and I really don't want to be hasty, but if Ralf Schumacher is to be believed, Lawson might only have 6 months to prove himself worthy of the senior seat, or he could face some dire consequences, either being demoted right back to Racing Bulls, or removed altogether. Now, I know what you're going to say. Come on, Law, you're taking what Ralf Schumacher says seriously? Okay, I will admit he does say some very bold and ridiculous things on occasion, but at the same time, given Red Bull's history, the guy might have a point. This isn't out of the realms of possibility. It could easily happen if Liam doesn't do the business, because Red Bull are taking a big gamble on him. After only 11 race starts with Racing Bulls and AlphaTauri, they're giving him the plum, even quicker than Alex Albon, the quickest in their entire history. But I must immediately point out to any Liam Lawson fans out there that no, I am not wanting him to fail. I would just rather Red Bull settle itself down and make use of the drivers that they've already got and give them the room to breathe. 2 or 3 seasons, ideally, instead of just rushing people in. You only give them half a season and go like, they're not good enough, get them out. Just believe in their junior talent to at least have some time to acclimatise. Come on. And besides, Lawson is confident that he's up for the challenge, that he could succeed where previous drivers couldn't, because according to him, he's not that worried about the driving style debate, and he feels confident that he could get decent results with the RB21, since, well, him being the Red Bull Reserve meant that he had a hand in the car's development in the simulator, so he does have some experience with it already. Not to mention, by Horner's own words, in returns for him not taking part in active competition in 2024 until he replaced Daniel Ricciardo after Singapore, his regimen was mainly consisting of intense training in whatever Red Bull machinery they could muster, as well, of course, a very, very comprehensive simulator testing program. It's not like he hasn't been busy. They've been preparing him. They've been making sure that he is up to the task, and clearly whatever happened in the background, it was enough. Or was it? Maybe Red Bull's hands were tied by Lawson's management team. Maybe they are just as persuasive or manipulative as Verstappen's one. But we'll talk about that later. But if you choose to align yourself with the team from Milton Keynes, you had better really come up with the goods and quickly. Or else you could be out of a job in a few months. Yeah, it can be pretty brutal. And here's where we get into the crux of my building theory and doubts and concerns, so I'll get the foam of doubt out for this one, about how Arvid Lindblad might be in F1 as early as maybe after the summer break. For Lindblad, if he does win out, or at least get in the top 3 of Formula Regional Oceania, F2 would become less about getting points and winning the title, and more about staying sharp. Much like Mercedes once did with Kimi Antonelli, Red Bull could use this time to refine Lindblad's readiness for the big leagues. The title would be nice, but it wouldn't be the goal. And also, right now, Formula 2 is going through a bit of an existential crisis right now. The legitimacy of it is really proving to be becoming less and less relevant, because with every single season that passes, you winning the F2 championship is not a guaranteed ticket for you getting a role in Formula 1. And all these people going, it's okay, you can become a reserve driver. Well, what happened to Felipe Drugovich then? Him being stuck at Aston Martin for all eternity, and then probably be looked over in case Honda decide to actually really assert themselves and have Lance Stroll replaced with Yuki Tsunoda. So what will happen to Felipe? What's that? Teo Porcher never got a chance. And he was the 2023 world champion. Bortoletto, well, I'm happy that he got a response, but he's the first guy since Mick Schumacher to get straight into Formula 1 after winning the championship. 4 years. So it's not a guarantee. And also, we've got to talk about maybe the idea, much like with the ending of Animal Farm, how all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others, that some Formula 2 teams are a little bit more prepared and have some more resources compared to some other Formula 2 teams. Fortunately, 2024 redressed the balance a little bit, so don't be surprised in a couple of years that Prema basically walks it, and there you go. And not to mention the Mechachrome curse, that can easily turn things around and add jeopardy to proceedings. Prema suffered the most from that, arguably, putting pay to both Behrman and Antonelli standing any chance of fighting for the title. And let's not forget, Hadjar could have romped to the crown and made his case for staying at Racing Bulls for longer better, but then of course his car and clutch and team exploded more often than he would have liked. But despite all of that though, Antonelli, he had the backing of Toto no matter where he finished in the championship. He sat out the final race. He was just a little bit poorly, but that was enough for Daddy Toto to go, can't you see, I don't want to put Kimi in the car. He's a little bit poorly, he's got the sniffles. I'd rather him do really well in Mercedes. I want to put him in my car instead of that car. And Christian's doing the same thing, that he will be more than prepared, more than willing to take Arvid out of Formula 2, make Campos find somebody else, and then put him into one of their teams. Because, and this is really rare here, both Helmut Marko and Christian Horner are in agreement that Arvid Lindblad is the bee's knees and one of the future stars of Red Bull going into the 2030s. And Marko said that even though nobody can touch Max in terms of his legacy, Arvid is the closest that they've seen thus far. And that mutual enthusiasm for Arvid is at the expense maybe of the latest recruit to be promoted to F1, Isack Hadjar. Sure, he's earned a spot in F1 fair and square, but given what's going on around him, I fear that he could be a casualty of the state of affairs of the team, and that's through no fault of his own, at least right now. Because what's becoming clear right now is that Yuki Tsunoda is set at Team Faenza. He's increasingly valuable to their lot because you've got to remember, even though Racing Bulls are at the behest of Red Bull Racing, they've got their own battle to fight in the midfield because after getting incredibly embarrassed in 2024, they want to make sure that they can at least be a compelling competitor to Aston Martin, maybe go for 5th in the Constructors, because that's their ultimate goal. Yuki is the most experienced driver in their wheelhouse. He's pivotal for them to do it. Isack Hadjar, a rookie, he could be great, he could be so-so, or he could be a hindrance. That's the unknown at the moment, and so far, Isaac's not really filled me with confidence in an F1 car. He could prove me wrong in the pre-season test, and I might change my tune. But right now, just about a month before we go testing, I'm not entirely convinced. And if Arvid has a blinder of a season in F2, and despite no need to go for the title, he's a contender for it anyway going into the summer break, then I wouldn't do a double take if we suddenly get an announcement that a mid-season driver swap at Red Bull is about to go down. Racing Bulls has done it 2 seasons in a row now, involving Lawson and Ricciardo, so what's stopping them from going for the hat-trick, eh? I mean, it's not as bad as Jack Doohan's case, at least. I feel so sorry for the guy, because, again, those first-day photo trends, you barely saw anything with Jack Doohan. Franco, though, in his rather fetching jumper, I must admit, Alpine were going to town with him, and he's a reserve driver. A reserve! Be honest, Alpine! But Isack is the most likely out of all of the Red Bull drivers to get the boot early. Or he might be devoted to the reserve driver role for the rest of the year, and if no other Red Bull Junior in the ranks of F2 are convincing enough to get a promotion, he might get another chance to be an F1 driver for 2026. Horner or Marko will come out with some sort of statement saying, "No, well, we believe that Isack wasn't ready yet for the big time. Maybe we rushed him in too early, so we're going to put him on the bench for a while, and then in 2026 we'll give him another go." It's plausible for them to pull that kind of stunt, and that's them being generous. In my mind, Isack would have to be matching Yuki or be within a tenth or two to survive 2025, ideally beating Tsunoda, with Lindblad having an average F2 season. But if the latter is nailing it, Red Bull will not hesitate. Because Tsunoda now is basically a yardstick for future Red Bull talent. If they can beat him, having been around for over 100 Grand Prix during 2025, then it's pretty clear that the future with them and Red Bull is a pretty certain one. But hang on a minute, Law. You mentioned earlier that Lawson might not be safe either. Have you been stalling for time? Well, not exactly. You know how much I like to yap about things, and if you've been liking what you've heard so far about me yapping, then maybe drop a like on this video. It all depends on what happens during Liam Lawson's 2025 season, the first next to Max Verstappen, and what's going on in Formula 2. Because if Arvid completely trounces everyone in F2 and is a dead cert for the championship, and Lawson's first season is basically so-so and doesn't really contribute to Red Bull getting anywhere close to winning the Constructors' title, then yeah, things could change. Things could change. Because 11 Grand Prix, what's stopping Christian Horner just saying, you know, we actually think that this guy's with it, so we're just going to promote him immediately? Let's just be clear here. I think that contract extension thing with Checo really embarrassed Horner because it didn't work. It made him out to look like a fool. And all of this stems from the frustratingly clear circumstances of Tsunoda. Red Bull will not budge regarding him. The easiest thing to do would just to be promote him, but they won't do it. They will stonewall the issue until Honda departs for Aston Martin, and the team can wash their hands of any association and send Yuki packing with a so long and thanks for all the cash. So with Tsunoda locked in and Verstappen basically guaranteed a seat for life with them, it means that both rookies in Red Bull, Lawson and Hadjar, have some sort of dangling threat above them. Sure, Lawson's is a little bit further away and less likely to go down, but as for Hadjar, well, that one's a little bit iffy. It's really up to the French Algerian to really do the business. He has to go out swinging and just justify that, hey, if he had the car and the team and the reliability to go, he would have completely pummeled everyone. Boltonetto wouldn't have been anywhere close. But the level of conviction that Red Bull have toward the half-Brit, half-Swede, that's a really rare thing within the organisation. I don't think I ever recalled seeing this level of confidence with Liam Lawson at that young of an age. And you could also argue that maybe Lawson's promotion was down to Red Bull having no choice on the contractual level. Do you remember all the hubbub that was going on back in the day when, in 2023, Liam Lawson was universally liked? Everyone loved him, that he was the future of Formula 1, and that him not getting the seat at Visa, Cash App, RB or whatever, or Racing Bulls, was a travesty of justice, that he deserved it, and that Lawson was angry and had a right to be so. There was also that little thing that was going around that Helmut Marko dropped, much to the annoyance of Christian Horner probably, that Lawson's contract had a bit of a time limit, and it's something that he, the doctor, agreed to. Red Bull did not want to happen what happened to Alpine with Piastri and lose several $1 million of investment on a guy that might just go somewhere else. No, Christian did not want to give Zak Brown any more reasons to be smug. So therefore, Liam's management team's bluff was called, and he got the plum, and he's like, okay, fine, go up against Max. There you go. You got your seat for 2025. Now it's up to you, Liam. But make no mistake, Lindblad is coming. He will be an F1 driver in 2026, make no mistake. But a 2025 appearance outside of FP1 sessions is likely as well. The team want a teenage prodigy in their wheelhouse to lead them for 10 plus years or so, like what they had with Verstappen since 2016. But there is a key difference in their origin story, because Arvid has been through the mills with the Red Bull Junior team for multiple years, whereas Verstappen, he came in August 2014, weeks before his first FP1 session for Toro Rosso. So you could argue that whilst Verstappen technically is a Red Bull Junior, he's not a proper Red Bull Junior. He did not get a proper stipend with Red Bull for multiple years. He just came in because Red Bull had an open seat, Mercedes didn't. It was a matter of convenience. There was a mutual understanding, and therefore it had a degree of autonomy. Marko knew exactly what Verstappen was capable of and had been aware of that for many years. He could not let that slip, like Toto did. But this time around, Horner and Marko have learnt, and that now they control the destiny of Lindblad far more assuredly and with much more conviction and less wiggle room for Lindblad to have any autonomy, because if he doesn't do the business, they could easily drop him. They got that over him. But I'm not saying this in a draconian fashion. They believe in Arvid. They have real confidence in him. They're really confident in dropping $3 million for an F2 season when they technically don't need to do it. They're just going to do it anyway. And what also helps is that Max has been attentive to give Lindblad advice wherever he can, according to the British Swede. That he's been really fortunate that Verstappen has been accommodating to him and other young rookies, him not really caring who's next to him as well, so there's probably less resistance from Max than what could have been expected. And let's not forget that even though the Dutchman is not exactly the flavour of the month against many Formula One fans, many people agree with him about the idea for rookies to be allowed to make mistakes. Who was one of the biggest defenders of Kimi Antonelli after his Monza FP1 crash? One Max Verstappen. His biggest piece of advice to the young Italian was to just make mistakes, be allowed to make mistakes, have room to breathe, learn early on, and that will set you up for a good long future in the sport. And look where Max is right now. The first couple of seasons were very iffy, but now he's a four-time world champion. He got some room to breathe, he learnt his craft, he gained experience, he gained control of the team and confidence, and there you go. That is a major problem these days, is that rookies are not given time to shine. Because not just the teams are giving them pressure, it's social media as well. But the irony is that Max's own team is one of the biggest hypocrites going on in regards to that belief, as we all know by now, with De Vries being a particular scalp against Dr. Marco's record sheet and judgment, something he now thinks was the biggest ever mistake he made signing him. Yeah, it was. And I'm not slating Nick De Vries, by the way, it's just that he was a Mercedes guy, not a Red Bull guy. It just was not a fit, it was a total mismatch. But at the end of the day, this accumulation of points, super license ones, in such a short space of time is something you simply cannot ignore. Why are Red Bull doing this? It's to get him in as quickly as possible and make sure that he's ready to go in case something dire happens or one of the youngsters that they've already got in Formula One simply cannot cut the mustard. They want somebody ready to go and somebody who could stay with them for 5, 6, 7, 10 years, etc. for the long haul. There is a degree of responsibility on his shoulders as well. I mean, say what you will about Horner and Marco's people, they do have a record sheet that does justify their decisions sometimes. Sometimes they do make mistakes. Both of them do, as we've known the last couple of years. But right now, Lindblad, they believe in him. They've got control over him. He's doing the business in the junior categories, and now he's got a clear run to Formula One, which could happen next year, or even as early as this year. And Hadjar, well, I feel for you, man. I hope you do really well. Lawson, well, your seat's not entirely safe. Red Bull called your bluff. I hope you do well, but just remember that. I hope your confidence in your driving style serves you well. That's real. That's really genuine, people. I'm not making that up. It's a risky strategy, but risk has always been Red Bull's style. Whether this gamble pays off or backfires spectacularly, one thing is clear. The team is preparing for life after Verstappen, and their future might just rest on the shoulders of a teenage prodigy once again. Which could happen if the FIA stewards honour their new bank of penalties at their disposal, which basically curtail any overt expression of personal causes, or the refusal to attend any of their sanctioned sessions, something that Max Verstappen is not afraid to do, or they could lose points as well as plenty of money. To find out why I think this is an utter travesty and could spell doom for Formula One, watch this video next, straight after this one.